The birthday cake hit the floor before the truth hit me. My husband, my sister, their guilty faces said everything words couldn't. Standing in my own kitchen, watching my life unravel on what should have been my special day, I felt something inside me shift. They thought this moment would break me. They were wrong. This wasn't an ending. It was the first page of a story where I finally became the author of my own life. The morning of my 34th birthday started like any other Tuesday. I woke up to Caleb's side of the bed already empty, the sheets cold. He'd left a birthday card on the kitchen counter, store-bought, with his signature and "Love you" scrawled inside. No personalized message, but I told myself it was the thought that counted. "I've got meetings all day," he'd said last night, kissing my forehead, "but I'll make it up to you this weekend." I sipped my coffee and scrolled through the morning birthday texts. Mom and Dad sent a cute gif. My best friend Jessa promised drink soon. Nothing from my sister Marla, but she'd mentioned being out of town this week for a work conference. "Bad timing," she'd said with a sigh when I mentioned my birthday dinner plans last Sunday. "I'll make it up to you when I get back." That phrase again. Everyone making things up to me later. I dressed for work, choosing a deep blue dress that made me feel confident. As I applied my mascara, I caught myself smiling. 34. Not a milestone by any means, but still my day. I deserved to feel special. At the office, my coworkers had placed a small bouquet of daisies on my desk and a card signed by everyone in the department. Laura from accounting brought cupcakes around 11, and we all took a quick break in the conference room. "Any big plans tonight?" she asked between bites of vanilla frosting. "Nothing crazy. Just dinner with Caleb." I didn't mention that we hadn't actually made reservations anywhere, or that he hadn't specified when he'd be home. Around noon, my manager Kevin stopped by my desk. "Sarah, you've been putting in serious overtime on the Patterson project. Why don't you take the afternoon off? Consider it a birthday gift from the department." I started to protest. The quarterly reports were due Friday, but Kevin waved me off. "The reports can wait until tomorrow. Go enjoy your birthday." I packed up my things, feeling a sudden surge of excitement. With my unexpected free afternoon, I could pick up a cake and surprise Caleb when he got home from work. Maybe we could have an early dinner after all. At Sweet Dreams Bakery, I selected a chocolate ganache cake, Caleb's favorite. The baker added, "Happy birthday, Sarah," in elegant blue script and placed it in a white box tied with ribbon. "Someone's going to be very happy to see this," she said with a smile. "I hope so," I replied, thinking of Caleb's face when I walked in with it. Maybe I'd stop and grab a bottle of wine too. As I drove home, memories from past birthdays flickered through my mind. Last year's dinner at that Italian place downtown. The weekend trip to the mountains for my 30th. The surprise party Caleb and Marla had organized when I turned 28. Marla. A strange feeling tugged at me as I thought about my sister. There was something off about our last few interactions. Like last week, when she'd come over for Sunday dinner. The way she avoided eye contact when Caleb walked into the room. How she stammered when I mentioned my favorite birthday memory from childhood. The year our parents took us to the lake house and Marla had baked me a lopsided cake all by herself. "You remember that?" she'd asked, her voice strained. "Of course I do. You were so proud of that cake." She'd looked down at her plate. That was a long time ago. I brushed the memory aside as I pulled into our driveway. Caleb's car was there, which was odd. He'd said he had meetings all day. Maybe he'd come home for lunch? Or perhaps he'd decided to work from home this afternoon. I grabbed the cake box and my purse, feeling a flutter of anticipation. This was better, actually. We could start celebrating early. The house was quiet when I unlocked the front door. The lights were dimmed, and I could hear faint music playing from somewhere inside. "Hello," I called out. "Caleb." No answer. I set my purse down on the entry table and walked toward the kitchen, cake box balanced carefully in my hands. Maybe he was on a work call and couldn't answer. "Caleb?" I got off work early. I stopped in the doorway. There, frozen in place by the kitchen island, was my husband. In his hands was a bright red jacket, Marla's favorite leather jacket, the one I'd helped her pick out for her birthday last year. His expression shifted from shock to guilt in an instant. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Movement from the hallway caught my eye. Marla appeared, her face flushed and pale all at once. She wore a black dress I'd never seen before, her hair slightly mussed. Time seemed to slow down. The box slipped from my hands, hitting the floor with a dull thud. The cake inside was surely ruined, but I couldn't bring myself to care. Caleb found his voice first. "Sarah, this isn't." I held up my hand, cutting him off. The air felt thick, suffocating. Every heartbeat echoed in my ears. "I just need a moment," I whispered, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. I turned and walked back to the front door, picking up my purse along the way. Neither of them moved to stop me. Neither called out. At the door, I paused and said 5 words over my shoulder. "I'll let you explain later." Then I walked out, got in my car, and drove away. I wasn't crying. I wasn't shouting. I was just broken inside. I drove aimlessly, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. My phone buzzed repeatedly in my purse, but I ignored it. Where was I supposed to go? What was I supposed to do? Memories from the past 6 months began to surface like debris after storm. Caleb's late meetings that seemed to multiply. The text messages he'd angle away from me. Family dinners with Marla that suddenly got canceled. The way they both sometimes mentioned the same random topics, as if they'd been discussing them together. How had I missed this? Was I really that blind? Or had I simply trusted too much? The sun was setting when I found myself at Miller's Point, a scenic overlook outside of town. I parked and sat on the hood of my car, watching the sky turn from blue to orange to deep purple. My phone had stopped buzzing. I checked it briefly, 5 missed calls from Caleb, 3 from Marla, and a text from each. "Caleb, please come home so we can talk." "Marla, it's not what you think. Call me." I turned the phone off and slipped it back into my purse. Night had fallen completely by the time I drove away from the lookout. I couldn't go home. Not tonight, not with both of them there, not with the birthday cake still smashed on the floor. I checked into the Pinewood Motel, a small place off the highway. The woman at the front desk gave me a sympathetic look, but didn't ask questions. In the room, I lay fully clothed on the bed, staring at the ceiling. The events of the day played on loop in my mind. Caleb holding Marla's jacket. Marla appearing from the hallway. The look they exchanged before they saw me. I realized then that I didn't want their explanations. I didn't want to hear about how it just happened, or how they never meant to hurt me. I wanted the truth. And I would get it on my terms. The motel bed was too firm, the pillows too flat, and the sheets smelled faintly of industrial detergent. I barely slept. When the first rays of sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, I was already awake, staring at water stains on the ceiling. My phone had died overnight. I plugged it in, but didn't turn it on yet. I wasn't ready for their messages, their excuses, their demands for me to come home and talk things out. The silence felt protective somehow. After a quick shower, I checked my appearance in the bathroom mirror. Same face, same eyes, though perhaps with darker circles beneath them. Same person, but something fundamental had shifted. The Sarah who left work yesterday with a chocolate cake and birthday excitement no longer existed. I turned on my phone and watched as notifications flooded in. 12 missed calls from Caleb. 8 from Marla. Dozens of text messages from both. A voicemail from my mother asking why I wasn't answering Marla's calls. And 1 text from Jessa. "Are you okay? Call me when you can." I silenced the phone without reading any messages and headed to the motel office for coffee. The same woman from last night was there, arranging pastries in a display case. "Rough night?" she asked, sliding a styrofoam cup toward me. "You could say that." She nodded, not pushing further. "Coffee's on the house. Pastries too if you want one." I thanked her and took my coffee outside. The morning was cool, the sky clear blue. Such a beautiful day for my world to be falling apart. My phone buzzed in my pocket. "Jessa again. Seriously worried about you. Please just let me know you're alive." I texted back. "I'm alive. Need space. We'll call later." She responded immediately. "Whatever you need. Here when you're ready." Around noon, I checked out of the motel and drove to a small cafe across town, as far from our neighborhood as I could get. I ordered lunch I couldn't taste and tried to plan my next steps. I couldn't avoid them forever. I couldn't hide in motels and cafes indefinitely. But I couldn't face them yet either. My phone buzzed with another text from Jessa. Coffee at my place? No questions asked if you don't want to talk about it. I accepted. Jessa's apartment was my safe zone, the one place neither Caleb nor Marla would think to look for me. Jessa had been my friend long before I met Caleb. She'd been our wedding photographer 6 years ago, capturing what I'd thought were genuine moments of love and commitment. When I arrived, Jessa took one look at me and pulled me into a hug. You look like hell, she said, leading me to her couch. Feel like it too. She handed me a mug of coffee and sat beside me. True to her word, she didn't ask questions. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the shadows lengthen across her living room floor. Caleb called me, she said finally. Asked if I'd heard from you. My hands tightened around the mug. What did you tell him? That I hadn't, which was true at the time. She hesitated. He seemed really anxious. Has been for weeks, actually. I looked up at that. Weeks. Jessa shifted uncomfortably. Yeah, I noticed it at Lisa's baby shower last month. He kept checking his phone, seemed distracted. Was Marla there? She left early, said she wasn't feeling well. Jessa took a deep breath. Sarah, there's something else. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I saw them together about 3 weeks ago, at that little boutique on Main Street. They were in the parking lot talking. They looked close. My stomach clenched. Close how? Like they were having an intense conversation. He touched her arm at one point. When they saw me, they jumped apart like teenagers caught smoking behind the school. I set my mug down with shaking hands. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know what to tell you. That your husband and sister were talking in a parking lot? It seemed innocent enough at the time. She reached for my hand. I'm sorry, Sarah. If I'd thought for 1 second. It's not your fault, I said quietly. I missed the signs too. After leaving Jessa's, I drove around until I was sure Caleb would be at work. Then I went home. The house was spotless. No sign of the dropped cake. No evidence of whatever had happened yesterday. I walked through each room slowly, seeing everything with new eyes. The photos of Caleb and me on the mantel. The throw pillows Marla had given us last Christmas. The dining room table where we'd all shared countless family meals. In the guest room, I found the first piece of evidence, a small bottle of perfume tucked behind books on the nightstand. Marla's signature scent. She hadn't stayed overnight in months. Why was it here? In Caleb's office, I found an old journal of mine buried under some papers. I hadn't seen it in years. Pages had been ripped out. I remembered now. Marla had borrowed it once, claiming she needed writing inspiration for a creative writing class she was taking. In the kitchen trash, buried beneath coffee grounds and vegetable peelings, I found a birthday card. It was addressed to me, in Marla's handwriting, but had never been opened. The message inside was generic, impersonal. Happy birthday, sister. Hope it's a great one. Love, Marla. It felt like guilt on paper. I was about to leave when I heard a key in the front door. Caleb walked in, stopping short when he saw me. Sarah, he breathed. Thank God. I've been so worried. In his hands was a bouquet of pink roses, my favorite. The gesture that might have melted my heart yesterday now felt like a slap in the face. I just came to get some clothes, I said coldly. Please, can we talk about this? It's not what you think. Not here, I replied. Not now. Then when? He took a step toward me. I took a step back. I'll let you know. I grabbed a suitcase from the closet and filled it with clothes, toiletries, my laptop. Caleb hovered in the doorway, watching me pack. Where are you staying? He asked. That's not your concern right now. Sarah, please. I love you. What you saw was my husband holding my sister's jacket in our kitchen while she came out of our hallway looking guilty as hell. I zipped the suitcase closed. Unless you're about to tell me you were planning some elaborate surprise party, I don't want to hear it. I pushed past him with my suitcase. At the door, I paused. I'll talk to you when I'm ready. Just not here. Back in my car, I sat for a moment, hands gripping the steering wheel. I hadn't cried yet. Not a single tear. I wondered if I was in shock, or if the betrayal ran so deep that tears couldn't reach it. My phone buzzed with a text from Marla. I owe you the truth. Come over tonight, no excuses. I stared at the message for a long time before responding. 8 p.m. I spent the afternoon driving around again, eventually checking into a different motel. At 7:55, I parked outside Marla's apartment building. My heart pounded as I climbed the stairs to her unit. What truth was I about to hear? Did I even want to know? Marla opened the door before I could knock. She looked terrible, hair unwashed, eyes red-rimmed, wearing the same clothes she'd had on yesterday. "Thank you for coming," she said, stepping aside to let me in. Her apartment was a mess, unusual for my normally tidy sister. Takeout containers littered the coffee table. A half-empty wine bottle sat on the kitchen counter. "Do you want something to drink?" she asked. I shook my head. "Just say what you need to say." She sat on the couch, wringing her hands. "I don't know where to start. The beginning would be good." She took a deep breath. "After Tom and I broke up, I was so lonely. You know that. You and Caleb were so kind, inviting me over for dinners, including me in everything." I remained standing, arms crossed. "So, this is how you repay kindness?" "It wasn't like that," she said quickly. "Caleb was just being nice at first. He'd call to check on me. Sometimes he'd stop by with groceries or just to talk." "When did it change?" She looked down at her hands. "That family barbecue at Mom and Dad's, back in May. You were busy helping Mom in the kitchen. Caleb and I were talking on the patio. He told me things had been distant between you two, that you were always working late or too tired." My jaw clenched. "So you saw an opening?" "No. It wasn't like that. We were just talking and then—" She trailed off. "And then what, Marla?" "And then we started texting more. And the texts became different. And then one day he stopped by when you were at that conference in Chicago, and—" I held up my hand. "No. I don't need those details." She stood up, moving toward me. "Sarah, you have to understand. I was so lonely, and you've always had everything. The perfect husband, the perfect job, the perfect life." I stepped back, fury rising in my chest. "So this was what? Jealousy? You wanted what was mine." "You were always busy," she said defensively. "Always too caught up in your work to appreciate what you had. I just wanted someone to see me for once, not you." And there it was, the ugly truth beneath the excuses. Not an affair born of passion or love, but of envy and resentment. "How long?" I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. "How long has this been going on?" She hesitated. "Since May. For months. While I planned family dinners. While I confided in her about wanting to start a family soon. While I helped her through her breakup with Tom." "Get out of my way," I said, moving toward the door. She grabbed my arm. "Sarah, please. You have to understand." I pulled away from her grip. "Understand what?" "That my sister and my husband have been lying to my face for months? That you both betrayed me in the worst possible way? That you were sleeping with him while looking me in the eye and pretending to be my sister?" "I am your sister." "No," I said, hand on the doorknob. "Sisters don't do this to each other." I walked out of her apartment, her pleas fading behind me. In the stairwell, I leaned against the wall, fighting to catch my breath. Still no tears. Just a hollow ache where my heart should be. 3 days passed in a blur of sleepless nights at the motel and distracted days at work. I'd told Kevin I was dealing with family issues, and he'd been understanding about my decreased productivity. Jessa brought me meals and sat with me in the evenings, not pushing for details, but offering silent support. My phone continued to buzz with messages from both Caleb and Marla. I read them all but responded to none. Their words blurred together, excuses, apologies, pleas for forgiveness. None of it touched the frozen core inside me. On Friday afternoon, I left work early for my first appointment with Dr. Elwood, a therapist Jessa had recommended. I don't usually do therapy, I told her as I sat stiffly on her office couch. But I don't know how to process this. Dr. Elwood, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, nodded. Betrayal trauma is particularly devastating when it comes from multiple trusted people simultaneously. It's like being stabbed from inside your own house. That phrase stuck with me. Stabbed from inside my own house. Yes, that's exactly how it felt. Have you spoken with either of them since discovering the affair? She asked. Briefly. Not in any meaningful way. And how are you feeling? I considered the question. Hollow. Like someone scooped out everything inside me and left just enough to keep breathing. We talked for the full hour, about trust, about self-worth, about why betrayal by family cuts deeper than any other kind. I didn't cry, but my voice shook several times. Dr. Elwood didn't push or judge. She just listened and occasionally offered insights that made too much sense. Same time next week, she asked as our session ended. I nodded. It hadn't fixed anything, but talking about it with someone who had no stake in the situation felt like lancing a wound, painful but necessary. That evening, I drove to my parents' house. I hadn't told them what happened yet, and their confused text messages about why I wasn't answering Marla's calls were becoming harder to ignore. Mom opened the door, her face lighting up when she saw me. Sarah, what a lovely surprise. Dad called out from his recliner in the living room. That our birthday girl? I stepped inside the house I'd grown up in, suddenly feeling like a child again, vulnerable and seeking protection. Mom must have seen something in my face because her smile faded. What's wrong, sweetheart? We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where Marla and I had done homework, shared secrets, planned futures. I told them everything, finding Caleb with Marla's jacket, the confrontation at her apartment, the timeline of betrayal. Mom's face crumpled. Dad's hands clenched into fists on the table. I don't understand, Mom said, shaking her head. Marla wouldn't, she couldn't. She did, I said simply. Dad stood up and paced the kitchen. I'm going to call that boy and give him a piece of my mind. No, I said firmly. I need to handle this my way. Mom reached across the table for my hand. Sarah, I need to tell you something. It might help you understand, though it doesn't excuse anything. She took a deep breath. Marla has always struggled with jealousy toward you. Even as children. You were always the achiever, the one teachers praised, the one who made friends easily. Marla was always in your shadow, and she resented it. That doesn't justify sleeping with my husband, I said, pulling my hand away. Of course not, Mom said quickly. Nothing justifies that. I'm just trying to make sense of it myself. I left their house an hour later, promising to stay in touch. As I drove back to the motel, I thought about what Mom had said. Had Marla really been jealous all these years? Had I been blind to that too? When I checked in at the motel office, the clerk handed me an envelope. Your husband dropped this off earlier. Said it was important. Inside was a handwritten letter from Caleb, 6 pages long. I took it back to my room and sat on the bed, turning the pages over in my hands without reading them. Finally, I opened it. Sarah, it began. I know you may never forgive me, and I wouldn't blame you. What I did was unforgivable. I was confused, pressured, and ashamed. I never expected it to go this far. The letter continued with detailed apologies and explanations, how he'd felt neglected, how Marla had been there, how one thing led to another. He claimed to have ended things with her several times, only to be drawn back in. He wrote about guilt, about self-loathing, about lying awake at night next to me, hating himself for what he was doing. The final paragraph read, I love you, Sarah. I have always loved you, even when I was betraying that love in the worst way possible. I will spend the rest of my life trying to earn back your trust if you'll give me that chance. But if you can't, I understand. Either way, I am deeply, profoundly sorry for the pain I've caused you. I folded the letter and placed it back in the envelope. Then I reached into my suitcase and pulled out our wedding album, something I'd grabbed from the house almost as an afterthought. I opened it to the page with our handwritten vows. Caleb's neat script promised fidelity, honesty, partnership. I traced the words with my finger, remembering how sincere he'd sounded that day. How his voice had cracked when he promised to cherish me always. I laughed bitterly, the sound harsh in the quiet room. Then I closed the book, hard, and put it away. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Caleb. "Can we meet for dinner tonight?"
Just to talk.
"Public place, your choice." I hesitated, then replied. "Landmark Grill. 7 p.m. The Landmark was busy enough that we wouldn't cause a scene, but quiet enough for conversation. I arrived early and requested a corner booth, ordering water while I waited. Caleb appeared at exactly 7 o'clock, looking haggard. He'd lost weight in the weeks since I'd left. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his usually neat hair was disheveled. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sliding into the booth across from me. I nodded but said nothing. The waitress came for our orders. I asked for a salad I knew I would need. Caleb ordered coffee. "I got your letter," I said after she left. "Did it help at all?" "It explained some things. It didn't fix anything." He nodded, his eyes fixed on the table between us. "I don't expect you to forgive me, Sarah." "Good. Because I don't know if I can." We sat in silence for a long moment. No raised voices. No dramatic scene. Just quiet, truthful pain filling the space between us. "Why her?" I finally asked. "Of all people, why my sister?" He looked up, his eyes wet. "I don't have a good answer for that. It wasn't planned. It just happened. She was there. She was lonely. She was available." "Available," I repeated, like a parking space. "That's not what I meant. Do you love her?" He flinched.
No.
"It wasn't about love."
What was it about then? Sex? Ego?
"Boredom." "I don't know," he admitted. "Weakness, maybe. Selfishness, definitely." Our food arrived. Neither of us touched it. "What happens now?" he asked. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since sitting down. This man I'd loved. This man I'd trusted. This man who'd shattered everything we'd built together. "I don't know," I said honestly. Part of me wants to walk away and never look back. Part of me remembers 6 years of marriage and wonders if there's anything worth saving. "There is," he said quickly. "I know I don't deserve another chance, but if you gave me one..." "I'm not the same woman anymore," I interrupted. "You broke something you can't just glue back. Even if I wanted to forgive you, I don't know if I can be who I was before." He nodded slowly. "I understand." We sat in silence again, the weight of all that had been lost pressing down between us. Around us, other diners laughed and talked, living normal lives untouched by betrayal. "I need time," I said finally. "I can't make any decisions right now." "Take all the time you need," he replied. "I'll be here, however long it takes." I left the restaurant alone, the night air cool against my face. For the first time since finding Caleb with Marla's jacket, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not healing, but perhaps the first hint that both might be possible someday. Not today. Maybe not for a long time. But someday. And for now, that was enough. 3 weeks after that dinner at the Landmark, I finally returned home. The motel had served its purpose, but I couldn't hide forever. Plus, the bills were adding up, a practical concern that felt oddly grounding amid the emotional chaos. Caleb had been staying with his friend Mike. He'd texted to let me know when he'd cleared out his essential belongings, giving me space to return without confrontation. I'd appreciated that small courtesy. The house felt different now, emptier, despite most of Caleb's things still being there. I walked through each room slowly, reacquainting myself with my own space. In our bedroom, my bedroom now, I changed the sheets and rearranged the furniture. Small acts of reclamation. That evening, I called Caleb. "I'm ready to talk," I said when he answered. "Really talk." "Thank you," he said, his relief palpable even through the phone. "When and where?" "Tomorrow night. Here at the house." "Are you sure?"
Yes.
This conversation needs to happen where the damage was done. The next evening, I prepared myself carefully. Not dressing up, this wasn't a date, but making sure I felt strong. Hair pulled back, minimal makeup, comfortable clothes. Dr. Elwood had coached me on setting boundaries, on owning my power in this conversation. Caleb arrived exactly on time, looking nervous. He'd brought nothing with him, no flowers, no gifts, no grand gestures. Another point in his favor. We sat at the kitchen table, 2 mugs of coffee between us like a neutral buffer zone. Before you say anything, I began. I need you to know that I've thought about this carefully. I'm not making decisions based on emotions or impulse. He nodded, waiting. If you want this to work, if there's any chance of us moving forward, I have conditions. I took a deep breath. First, complete honesty from this point forward. No more secrets, no more lies. Second, absolutely no contact with Marla.
None.
Third, couples therapy and lots of it. He looked up, hope flickering in his eyes. You're considering giving us another chance? I'm considering giving you space to show me who you really are now. I wrapped my hands around my mug, drawing strength from its warmth. But I'm not promising forgiveness, only the opportunity for you to earn it. And it may never come. You need to understand that. He seemed stunned by my controlled demeanor, my lack of either tears or rage. He'd expected something different, more emotion, more vulnerability. Instead, he found himself facing a woman who had spent weeks rebuilding her inner fortitude. I understand, he said finally, and I accept all your conditions. Whatever it takes, however long it takes. We talked for 3 hours that night. He answered every question I asked, no matter how painful. When it was over, he left without argument when I said I needed to be alone. The next morning, I woke to a barrage of angry texts from Marla. So, you're just going to let him play both of us? After everything he did?
He told me you two talked.
Are you seriously thinking of taking him back? Call me.
We need to talk about this.
I didn't respond. Instead, I blocked her number, a small action that felt enormously liberating. Later that day, my mother called. Sarah, have you spoken to your sister recently?
No, Mom.
And I don't plan to. She sighed heavily. She's very upset. Says you've blocked her number. I have. Sweetheart, I know what she did was terrible, but she's still your sister. Family is forever. I gripped the phone tighter. Mom, I need you to understand something. What Marla did wasn't just a mistake or a bad decision. She betrayed me in the most fundamental way possible, and she did it for months. She's not entitled to my forgiveness just because we share DNA. There was a long pause before my mother spoke again. Your father and I would like to have you both over for dinner, to start healing this rift.
No.
Sarah. I'm not ready, Mom. And I'm not sure I'll ever be ready. Please respect that. 3 days later, I received a formal invitation in the mail to a family dinner at my parents' house. I called my mother immediately. I told you I wasn't ready for this. Just give it a chance, Sarah. One dinner. That's all I'm asking. I almost refused again, but the weariness in her voice stopped me. This wasn't just about Marla and me, it was affecting our parents too. They were caught in the middle, trying to love 2 daughters who couldn't be in the same room.
Fine.
One dinner. But don't expect miracles. The dinner was set for Sunday evening. I arrived exactly on time, steeling myself as I walked up to my parents' front door. Dad answered, pulling me into a tight hug. How are you holding up, kiddo? He whispered. I'm managing. Inside, Mom was busy in the kitchen. No sign of Marla yet. She's running late, Mom explained, noticing my glance around the room. Said she'd be here by 6:30. Of course she was late. Marla had never been on time for anything in her life. At 6:45, the front door opened and Marla swept in. She dressed for the occasion in a fitted black dress and heels, her hair and makeup immaculate. She looked like she was attending a cocktail party rather than a family dinner. Sorry I'm late, she announced. Traffic was a nightmare. She hugged our parents and then turned to me with a tight smile.
Sarah.
You look well. I nodded but said nothing. Dinner was excruciating. Mom filled every silence with nervous chatter about neighbors and church functions. Dad focused intently on his food. Marla alternated between theatrical sighs and overly bright anecdotes about her work. I remained silent, speaking only when directly addressed. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing, counting the minutes until I could leave. Sarah's been seeing a therapist, Mom said during dessert, clearly desperate for conversation topics. Dr. Elwood, right, honey? Yes. Marla's fork clinked against her plate. Therapy. How modern. It helps, I said, meeting her eyes for the first time that evening. She specializes in betrayal trauma. The table fell silent. Well, Mom said after a moment. Who wants more pie? As soon as dessert was finished, I stood up. Thank you for dinner, Mom. I should be going. So soon? Mom looked disappointed, but not surprised. I have an early meeting tomorrow. I hugged my parents goodbye and walked toward the front door. Behind me, I heard Marla's heels clicking on the hardwood floor. Sarah, wait. I turned to face her in the driveway, the motion sensor light illuminating us in harsh, white light. What, Marla? You can't just keep ignoring me forever. We need closure. I laughed, the sound brittle in the night air. Closure? Is that what you need? Don't you? Don't you want to move past this? Closure isn't something I owe you, I said quietly. And forgiveness doesn't mean access. Her face darkened. So that's it? You'll work things out with Caleb, but I'm just cut off? He was equally responsible. This isn't about who is responsible. It's about who I choose to allow in my life going forward. She stepped closer, her voice rising. You always do this. You always have to be the perfect one, the wounded one, the one everyone feels sorry for. I'm not having this conversation, I said, turning to leave. Her hand shot out, catching my arm and spinning me back around. Don't you walk away from me. Let go of me, Marla. Not until you listen. Her voice was almost a shriek now. You think you're so much better than me, don't you? Little Miss Perfect with her perfect life. Well, guess what? Your perfect husband wanted me. I pulled my arm free. And how did that work out for you? Her face contorted with rage. Before I could react, she slapped me hard across the face. The crack of it echoed in the quiet neighborhood. I stood there, my cheek burning, too shocked to speak. Headlights swept across the driveway as a car pulled in. Caleb's car. He got out quickly, clearly having witnessed what just happened. What the hell, Marla? He demanded, moving to stand between us. She backed away, suddenly looking small and pathetic. She provoked me. By what? Standing there? He turned to me. Are you okay? I nodded, one hand still pressed to my cheek. Marla's eyes darted between us. So it's true. You two are back together. After everything. We're working on it, Caleb said firmly. Which is none of your business anymore. You son of a... Go inside, Marla. I cut her off. Before you make this worse. She stood there a moment longer, trembling with rage, before turning and stalking back to the house. The door slammed behind her. Caleb turned to me. I'm sorry. Your mom called and said you might need a ride home.
I didn't expect that.
Neither did I. I touched my cheek again, wincing slightly. Can you drive me home? I don't think I should be behind the wheel right now. In the car, Caleb kept glancing at me. Do you want to talk about what happened? Not really. Should we get some ice for your cheek? It's fine. We drove in silence for a while. Finally, I spoke. I think I need to talk to a lawyer. He looked alarmed. About us?
No.
About a restraining order against Marla. The next morning, I made an appointment with a lawyer. Nathan Wright was middle-aged and matter-of-fact, listening carefully as I explained the situation. Family cases are always complicated, he said when I finished. Especially when there's a history of emotional instability. Can I get a restraining order? Based on one incident? It would be difficult. But we can certainly start documenting aggressive or manipulative contact. He slid a notepad across his desk. I want you to record every interaction, texts, calls, emails, in-person encounters. Date, time, what was said or done. If there's a pattern of harassment, we have a much stronger case. And in the meantime? In the meantime, continue with no contact. Block her on all platforms. If she shows up at your home or workplace, do not engage. Call the police immediately. I nodded, feeling both relieved and exhausted. Thank you. Family or not, he added gently, you have the right to peace. That evening, Caleb and I had our first session with Dr. Elwood. She welcomed him with the same professional warmth she'd shown me, but I noticed a certain coolness in her eyes. She was on my side, and she wasn't hiding it. I want to be clear about something before we begin, she said, looking directly at Caleb. This isn't about fixing your marriage. It's about discovering if it can be fixed. Those are two very different goals. He nodded, hands clasped tightly in his lap. Sarah has been doing important individual work. Now we need to see if you're willing to do the same, to look honestly at yourself and your choices without deflection or excuses. I am, he said quietly. The session was brutal. Dr. Elwood asked pointed questions that left nowhere to hide. Caleb cried twice, once when describing his own father's infidelities, and again when articulating the full extent of his betrayal. I remained dry-eyed throughout, a fact that seemed to surprise him. As we were leaving, I asked the question that had been haunting me. Would you have told me the truth if I hadn't walked in that day? If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes? He hesitated, his hand on the car door. Then, looking down, he admitted, probably not. The honesty hurt more than a lie would have. But it was a truth I needed to hear. That night, alone in my bedroom, I pulled out an old journal. Not the one Marla had borrowed, but a new one. Blank pages waiting for new thoughts. I began to write, not about Caleb or Marla, but about me. About who I had been before all this. About my passions and dreams that had nothing to do with being a wife or a sister. The next day, I went to a home goods store and bought new bedding, new curtains, new throw pillows. I rearranged the furniture. I took down the framed wedding photo from the dresser and put it in a drawer, not destroying it, just removing it from daily view. I'm not erasing the past, I whispered to the empty room. I'm just no longer worshiping it. Weeks passed. Caleb and I continued therapy. He remained at Mike's but came over for dinner twice a week. We talked, really talked, about everything from childhood traumas to future hopes. I began to see him not as the husband who betrayed me, but as a deeply flawed man trying desperately to be better. One Saturday morning, I went for a long walk alone. The air was crisp, leaves crunching beneath my feet. As I rounded the corner near the park, I caught myself smiling at nothing in particular. Not because of Caleb, not because of some happy memory, just because. A moment of peace in the midst of pain. And I realized healing was happening. Not completely. Not perfectly. But it was there, a small green shoot pushing through frozen ground. I think we need more time apart, I told Caleb during our fourth therapy session. Real time. Not just living separately while working on getting back together. He looked stricken. What do you mean? We've been pretending we're okay. That will eventually be okay. But I need space to figure out who I am now, without the pressure of trying to save our marriage. Dr. Elwood nodded encouragingly. Sarah has been doing some important self-reflection. This isn't about punishment, Caleb. It's about growth. How long? He asked, his voice tight. I don't know. That's the point. I need time without a deadline. That evening, he came over to pack more of his things. We'd agreed he would move from Mike's couch to a small guest apartment across town. It feels like I'm losing you, he said as he filled a duffel bag with books and winter clothes. You already lost me, I replied, not unkindly. Now we're both trying to find out who we are after everything that happened. Surprisingly, once he was gone, I didn't feel lonely. The house wasn't empty. It was peaceful. I could stay up late reading without worrying about disturbing anyone. I could play music while I cooked. I could sprawl across the entire bed. At Dr. Elwood's suggestion, I joined a support group for betrayal trauma. The first meeting was intimidating, a circle of strangers in a church basement, sharing their most painful experiences. But as I listened to their stories, I felt a strange comfort. I wasn't alone. Others had walked this path before me. Dana, a woman in her 50s, spoke about forgiving her sister and her husband, but never going back to either. People assume forgiveness means reunion, she said, her voice steady. It doesn't. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for them is to forgive from a distance. Did you ever feel guilty? Asked a younger woman across the circle. For not trying to save your marriage?
Donna smiled gently.
For a while. But then I realized something important. Peace doesn't always come from reunion. Sometimes it comes from release. Her words stayed with me for days, echoing in quiet moments. Peace doesn't always come from reunion. Sometimes it comes from release. 2 months after moving back home, I found myself in the spare bedroom, staring at boxes I'd never unpacked after our last move. One contained my old painting supplies, brushes, canvases, acrylics, and oils. I hadn't touched them in 5 years. Not since I'd taken that promotion that consumed all my free time. I set up an easel by the window and squeezed paint onto a palette. Red, black, white, gray. I had no plan, no vision. I just needed to create something, anything. The result was chaotic, swirls of crimson and ash gray colliding on canvas. It wasn't beautiful, but it was honest. I titled it The Birthday and hung it in the hallway. A week later, I came home to find a small package on the porch. Inside was a book, collected poems of Mary Oliver, my favorite poet. The note inside, in Caleb's handwriting, read simply, I never deserved your softness, but I want to learn how not to break it again. I kept the note, but didn't respond. The gesture touched me, but I wasn't ready for the complications of gratitude. The next day, I received an unexpected call from Amanda, a college friend who now ran a local arts center. Sarah, I'm so glad I caught you. Listen, our administrative assistant just quit, and we're in a bind. It's just part-time, weekends mostly, but I immediately thought of you. Any chance you'd be interested? Me? But I work in corporate marketing. Yes, but you also have an art background, and you're the most organized person I know. It's yours if you want it. I hesitated only briefly. Actually, that sounds perfect. The job was exactly what I needed. A creative environment, new people, work that had nothing to do with my regular career or my complicated personal life. Just mine. Our therapy sessions continued, though less frequently. Caleb had begun seeing Dr. Elwood individually as well. In one particularly intense joint session, he opened up about his father's serial infidelities and how they had shaped his understanding of marriage. My dad cheated on my mom for 20 years, he said, his voice low. And she always took him back. Always. I grew up thinking that's just what men did and what women accepted. That explains some things, I said. But it doesn't excuse them. I know. He looked up, his eyes clear. That's what I'm learning. Explanation isn't permission. I felt a complicated mix of emotions. Pity for the boy who had grown up in that environment. Anger at the man who had repeated the pattern. Hope for the person trying to break it. A few days later, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. Marla's handwriting on the outside. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity won out. Inside was a 12-page letter, handwritten on yellow legal paper. It began with Dearest Sarah and launched immediately into a detailed account of her childhood jealousies, her feelings of inadequacy beside my achievements, her desperate need for attention and validation. She wrote about therapy she'd started, about diagnoses of anxiety and depression, about medication and coping mechanisms. She described how her relationship with Caleb had begun in a moment of weakness and spiraled into an addiction to the forbidden thrill of it. The letter ended with pleas for forgiveness, for reconciliation, for another chance at sisterhood. I read it twice, carefully. Then I tore it in half, then quarters, then smaller pieces until it was confetti in my hands. I wasn't her therapist. I wasn't responsible for her healing. And I wasn't ready to be her sister again. 2 weeks later, Caleb and I attended a wedding together, our friends Taylor and Brian. It was our first public appearance as a couple since everything had happened. I wore a new dress, one Caleb had never seen before. He wore a suit I didn't recognize either. New versions of ourselves, testing the waters. Some people whispered when we walked in. Some avoided eye contact. Others were overly enthusiastic, trying too hard to act normal. We weathered it all with quiet dignity, neither confirming nor denying the rumors that had inevitably circulated. During the reception, Taylor's cousin approached me at the bar. "So, you guys worked it out, huh? After what he did?" I smiled politely. "We're taking things one day at a time." "I couldn't do it," she said, shaking her head. "If my husband cheated with my sister, both of them would be dead to me." "Everyone's journey is different," I replied, walking away before she could say more. Later, Caleb found me on the terrace, watching the sunset. "You okay? I saw Jessica cornering you earlier."
"I've fine."
"Just tired of being a cautionary tale." He nodded. "We can leave if you want."
"No."
"I'm not hiding anymore." Back home that night, I lit a candle and placed it on the kitchen island, the exact spot where I had found Caleb holding Marla's jacket all those months ago. I sat down across from him, the small flame dancing between us. "Is there still a chance for us?" he asked quietly. The question hung in the air, weighted with months of pain and healing, therapy and reflection. "There's a path," I said finally, "but it won't be the one we left behind. We can't go back to who we were. Too much has changed." "I know." He reached across the table, palm up, an invitation, not a demand. "I'm not the same either. Maybe that's not a bad thing." I placed my hand in his, feeling the familiar calluses on his fingers, the steady warmth of his skin. "Maybe not." "What have you learned from this process?" Dr. Elwood asked in what would be our final joint therapy session. Caleb answered first. "I've learned that betrayal doesn't end when the affair does, it echoes. Every decision I make now lives in the shadow of the pain I caused." She nodded, then turned to me. "Sarah?" I took a deep breath. "I've learned that I'm still whole, even after being split in two. That healing isn't about going back to who you were, but about discovering who you can become." Dr. Elwood smiled. "That's profound work, both of you. Where do you go from here?" Caleb and I exchanged glances. 3 months had passed since my birthday. 3 months of therapy, of separation, of slow rebuilding. He had moved back into the house 2 weeks ago, taking the spare room while we navigated this new version of us. "I'd like to renew our vows," Caleb said. "Not a big ceremony, just something small. A new beginning."
Dr. Elwood looked at me.
"How do you feel about that, Sarah?" "I'm not ready to say yes," I admitted. "But I'm willing to consider it." Later that week, I was organizing some files at the art center when a familiar figure appeared in the doorway. Marla. My heart rate immediately spiked. I hadn't seen her since the night she'd slapped me in our parents' driveway. "What are you doing here?" I asked, glancing around for Amanda or anyone else who might intervene. "I need to talk to you," Marla said. She looked different, thinner, her clothes hanging loosely on her frame. Her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, her face bare of makeup. "I have nothing to say to you." "Then just listen." She stepped into the office, closing the door behind her. "Please." I crossed my arms. 5 minutes. Then you leave." She nodded, her hands fidgeting with the strap of her purse. "I know you got my letter, and I know you probably threw it away." "I did." "That's fair." She swallowed hard. "I just wanted to tell you in person that I'm moving to Seattle. I got a job offer and I think some distance would be good for everyone." I said nothing. "I lost everything too," she continued, her voice cracking. "My sister, my relationship with our parents, my self-respect." "You didn't lose me," I replied coldly. "You threw me away. There's a difference." She flinched but nodded. "You're right. And I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know I won't be around to complicate things anymore." "Is that it?" "Yes." She turned to leave, then paused.
"One more thing.
Caleb never loved me. Not for a single moment. What we did was wrong in every way, but he always loved you. I was just available." After she left, I sat at my desk for a long time, staring at nothing. I felt numb, then sad, then unexpectedly relieved. Marla's departure wouldn't heal everything, but it would remove a constant source of pain and tension. That weekend, I visited my parents. We sat in the living room, the absence of Marla like a ghost among us. She told you she's moving? Mom asked. I nodded. To Seattle. She came by yesterday to say goodbye, Dad said. Broke your mother's heart. Mom dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. I just don't understand how we got here. My two little girls who used to be so close. I reached for her hand. Mom, I need you to understand something. I'm cutting Marlo off. Maybe not forever, but for now. I need that boundary to heal. And I need you to respect it. She looked at me for a long moment, then nodded slowly. I don't like it, but I understand. You deserve peace, Dad added quietly. Both of you do. Back home, I found myself in the guest room that had become my makeshift studio. Over the past months, I'd filled it with canvases, art supplies, books on technique and color theory. It was my space, my sanctuary. I moved the last of Caleb's things out and officially claimed it as my art studio. I hung my growing collection of paintings on the walls, a series I titled Things I Survived. A cracked candle, a split cake, a red jacket hanging alone. My next birthday arrived with much less fanfare than the last. I took a personal day from work and drove to a small cabin by the lake, 2 hours from the city. I'd rented it for the weekend. A gift to myself. I baked a simple cake from a box mix, topping it with store-bought frosting and a single candle. As the sun set over the water, I sat on the deck with a glass of wine and watched the light fade from the sky. Inside, I wrote a letter to myself, a tradition I'd started in therapy. It ended with, "You are no longer theirs to break. You are your own to rebuild." The next morning, Caleb texted, "Can I come up?"
Just to talk.
"I can get a separate cabin if you want." I hesitated, then replied, "There's only one cabin. But yes, you can come. Around noon." He arrived exactly at 12, a small duffel bag in one hand, a gift bag in the other. "Happy belated birthday," he said, holding out the gift. Inside was a beautiful leather-bound sketchbook and a set of professional drawing pencils. "I noticed you've been getting back into art," he explained. "Thought you might like these." "Thank you." I set them aside. "Would you like some coffee?" We sat on the deck, mugs in hand, looking out at the lake. The air was cool but not cold, the water perfectly still, reflecting the clouds above. "I've been thinking a lot about us," I said finally. "About what happened, about who we are now." He nodded but didn't interrupt. "I believe you're trying," I continued. "I see the change in you, the work you've done. But I don't love the man I once did, because he doesn't exist anymore. And I'm not the woman you married either. I've grown, and maybe that's the point." "What are you saying?" I reached into my bag and pulled out a sealed envelope. "This is for you." He took it, his hands trembling slightly. Inside were divorce papers and signed. His face fell as he looked through them. "So that's your decision?" "No," I said quietly. "That's the point. It's not a decision yet. It's a choice I'm giving both of us." I took a deep breath. "If you love me the way you say, you'll let me choose freely. And maybe someday I'll rewrite this story with you. But not today." He looked up from the papers, his eyes wet but clear. "I understand. Do you?" "I think so. This isn't an ending or a beginning. It's space. Room to decide without pressure." I nodded. "Exactly." We sat in silence for a long time, the envelope between us on the table. Finally, he stood up. "Thank you," he said softly. "For what?" "For everything. For giving me the chance to be better, even if it's not with you. For showing me what real strength looks like. For not letting my mistake define you." He leaned down and kissed my forehead gently, then picked up his duffel bag. "The cabin is yours for the weekend. I'll head back to town." "You don't have to." "I do," he said. "This is your space. Your time." I watched him walk to his car, get in and drive away. As his taillights disappeared around the bend, I felt tears rise, but they weren't from pain. They were from freedom. The freedom to choose my own path forward, whatever that might be. That evening, I lit one final candle and placed it on the cabin's small dining table. I hung my newest painting on the wall, a woman with her back turned, stepping into light. I'd titled it Choice. I looked at it for a long time, seeing not just the pain of the past but the possibility of the future. That terrible birthday had shattered my world, but from the pieces, I'd built something new, something stronger, something mine. I blew out the candle and smiled into the darkness. That day wasn't the end. It was the beginning of me. If Sarah's journey resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories that explore the complicated paths we take when life breaks us open.